All right, so thank you everyone for joining us. I know it's late, but it's really inspirational to see people on late at night trying to get themselves ready for the holiday of Shabuot, Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of receiving the Torah. And what I wanted to do tonight is to take a look at one of the major characteristics that every human being needs to have in order to be able to really accept the Torah for themselves and to really grow in the area of Torah. It's a very challenging midah, very challenging characteristic, and we're going to explore it together through the lens of one particular mitzvah. And so I think you'll enjoy it. I think it'll be looking at things from a little bit of a different angle. So why don't we start? I'm going to share my screen to the source sheet as I always do, and we're going to go through these sources one at a time, one by one. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just because I can't see on my own. If I don't zoom it out a little bit, let me know if I could see. Do we need our reading glasses? We're good to go. Oh, Steve, you got the reading glasses on. There you go. Okay. So this shiur I entitled Anava leKabbalat Torah. Excuse me. We're going to talk about the concept of humility and how it's necessary for receiving the Torah. I began with a pasuk in Megillat Ruth because it is customary for us to read Megillat Ruth, excuse me, on the holiday of Shavuot. And we're going to use a midrash that is mentioned on that pasuk to sort of launch us into the direction that I want to go, talking about the concept of humility. The pasuk reads as follows. This is a pasuk in chapter 2, after Ruth has discovered Boaz's field and has come home talking about the great kindness that Boaz has done for Ruth in giving her a field to be able to collect food for her impoverished family. And Naomi blesses Boaz when she hears the story. But Tomer Naomi said lechalata, to her daughter-in-law, Baruch hu ladonai, blessed is he to God, asher lo azav hasdo, for his kindness has not left, et hachayim ve'et hametim, neither the living nor the dead. Naomi had suffered great tragedy with her husband and 2 sons having died at the beginning of the story, and Boaz, being a family member, had every right, by the way, not to help Naomi and their family. Naomi's family abandoned the Jewish people in time of crisis, in time of famine. And so most people would probably say, no, I'm not helping you. You didn't help me at the time that we were in need. Why should I help you? And Boaz is not like that. He does not play a tit for tat over here. He offers his kindness and his field with open arms to Ruth and her family, despite their past history of stinginess with the rest of the Jewish people. And so Naomi blesses Boaz, both for his kindness with the Chayim, with those who are living, and the Metim, and with her family members who have passed. Naomi karov lanu ha'ish migo alenuhu. And Naomi informs Ruth that in fact this man is a relative of our family. He's amongst the redeemers who could potentially marry Ruth and purchase back the land of the family. We're not going to get into the whole details of the story, but Naomi here offers a beracha to Boaz for the great kindness that he performed for Ruth and the family. And in Ruth Rabbah here in source 2, the Midrashic book on Megillat Ruth, they point out a very nice idea on the fact that Naomi offers a blessing to Boaz. I'm going to read you the Midrash here, and I'll explain it as I go. Vayomer berucha atna Hashem biti hetav hasdech vegomer. In chapter 3, in chapter 3, we see that Ruth, in fact, is blessed by Boaz. And the rabbis tell us the following. Rabbi Yochanan ve'Resh Lakish, they had an argument, these 2 rabbis. Rabbi Yochanan said, Le'olam al yimna adam atzmo milelech etzel zaken levarecho. A person should never prevent himself from going to a zaken. Zaken literally means an elderly person, to receive a blessing from them. A person should always be enthusiastic about going to an elderly person to receive a blessing from them, because the blessings of the elderly have a tremendous impact on people. They are more closely connected to Hashem, and as a result, their berachot are more impactful on the individual. What is the proof to this? Boaz hayab ben shemonim shana velo nifkad. This midrash says that Boaz was 80 years and had not merited to have a child. 80 years old, he had not had a child. Kevan shehitpalela alav otat tzadeket. Once the righteous woman, Naomi, as we saw in the first pasuk, prayed for him and blessed him, miyad nifkad. Right away, Boaz was given the potency to be able to have a child. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, Vatomed Naomi, Baruch hu ladonai. Naomi said, may he be blessed to God. And from that point on, Boaz became fertile and was able to conceive a child with Ruth, and those children later descended to David HaMelech. So Naomi, the elderly woman, the tzadeket, who was also the righteous one, her blessing gave Boaz that ability. Resh Lakish disagrees and goes the opposite way. He says, Ruth bat 40 shana hayta velo nifkeda. We learn that the source of a blessing of an elderly is so powerful more from Ruth, because Ruth was 40 years old at the time, and she had not received the beracha of having children. She too was barren. 40-year-old woman who's barren has very little chance of being able to conceive a child. And yet, kevan sheniset lemahlon, v'kevan shehitpalel aleha otot tzadik, once Boaz prayed on behalf of Ruth, nifkeda, she was remembered and given the ability to conceive a child. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, Vayomer beucha at Hashem biti. Boaz says to Ruth, you should be blessed to God. So here we have two examples in Megillat Ruth. Naomi blessing Boaz, Boaz blessing Ruth. Naomi and Boaz are the elder statesmen of the Megillah, and their berachot have the ability to completely transform the fortune of the individuals that are in the story. Boaz is given fertility at the age of 80, according to the Midrash. Ruth is given the beracha of fertility at the age of 40, according to the Midrash, all because they received blessings from zikenim, from literally elderly people. Now, one thing that we do notice here, and this is what the Torah Temimah, Baruch Epstein picks up on, is that it seems as though they expanded the definition of the word zaken. Zaken literally means an elderly person. However, if you notice, I highlighted in the source that they actually refer to Naomi as tzadeket, as a righteous woman, and they refer to Boaz as a tzaddik, a righteous man, which leads the Torah Temimah to say it is not the age of the individual that is giving them the power of this blessing. Don't misconstrue the title Zaken as meaning literally an elderly person. Zaken is a code for righteous and wise individual. Typically, elderly people have more life experience, they have more years under their belt for study and for knowledge, and they tend to be the more wise individuals in the society. And so here the Torah Temimah says that in fact, elderly, zaken, doesn't mean mamash elderly, it doesn't mean literally old, it means wise. It means righteous, tzaddik and tzadeket. Just keeping that in mind is very important when we explore the next source. We talk about the mitzvah to honor the elderly in society. So far, all we explored was Naomi's berachah to Boaz, Boaz's berachah to Ruth. The Midrash points out that their berachot are incredibly powerful because of the position that they hold to be able to reverse conditions that are sometimes appear to be hopeless. But it appears from the Torah Temimah that it is not their age that is the defining factor, but rather their wisdom and their righteousness that is the defining factor. And from here, we would also learn the idea of going to a sage, a Torah scholar, to receive a beracha, not in a voodoo kind of way, but in an impactful and inspirational kind of way. Those who are the most closely connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like Avraham Avinu, were granted the power of passing that blessing on to others, and their prayers have impact on those whom they pray on their behalf. Any questions or comments to this point? Okay, now, based on this, I'd like to explore the mitzvah of honoring people who are elderly. So we have a mitzvah directly in the Torah. You can see in source 3, this is from Sefer Vayikra, chapter 19, Pasuk Lamed Bet, Pasuk 32. A very famous pasuk. Mipnei seva takum v'hadarta pnei zaken. You shall rise before the aged. Seva literally means old aged, and show deference to the old, to the zaken. V'yareta be'elohecha ani Adonai. You shall show fear to God. I am the Lord. This pasuk, taken at face value, seems to mean that a person has a responsibility to show deference and respect to those who are older in society. However, as we've already seen, very often the term zaken, or elderly, is referring to wisdom, not so much age. And in fact, here Rashi on the pasuk, quoting from the Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, does the same thing here as well. He says, "Mipnei seva takum." What does it mean that you shall rise before the elderly, before the aged? He says, "Yachol zaken ashmai." Can it possibly be that an elderly person who is not wise, who does not have Torah knowledge under their belt, one should rise before him? No, it can't be. Talmud lomar zaken. For this reason, the pasuk repeated zaken, meaning elderly, but en zaken ela shekana chokhmah. Zaken is not a reference except to one who purchased for himself or acquired for himself wisdom. In other words, once again, as we saw from the Torah Temimah on the Midrash in Rut, Rashi here again interprets that zaken does not literally mean old aged. It refers to somebody with wisdom, someone who has achieved high levels of scholarship. In Rashi's mind, quoting from the Gemara in Kiddushin, why should somebody need to simply rise in front of somebody who is of elderly age? What's the reason for that? What am I honoring? Just the fact that the person lived a very long life? There's nothing to honor there by Rashi's admission at face value. Only one who is truly wise and has achieved high levels of scholarship is one whom is worthy for you to rise in front of. That is Rashi's take on this pasuk, consistent with the Torah Temimah's take on the Midrash in Megillat Rut. Stevie, don't run away from us just yet. I know you're starting to get angry with me. I know, right? Some of the, if we have any elder statesmen here in the class, we're going to wrap it together. And one person that seems to defend the honor of those senior citizens, not yet, but senior citizens, is the Targum Unkelus. Targum Unkelus was written by Unkelus Hager. It's an Aramaic translation to the Torah, but often offers us commentary and insights as well into the meanings of the Torah. And if you see the Targum Unkelus, he does something very interesting. I'll read in the Aramaic and translate what he means. He's translating Mipnei seva takum, which means you shall rise before the aged, min kodam de sabar be'oraita, from in front of the one who sabar means he has logic, knowledge, be'oraita. Oraita should be a word that people are familiar with. When you hear de'oraita, what does de'oraita mean? From the Torah. Oraita means Torah. So he interprets mipnei seva takum to mean those who are knowledgeable in Torah, takum, you should stand from in front of them. This is the charge, to stand in front of a great Torah scholar. But then there's the second half of the pasuk. He says, uthadar apeh sava. But you should also glorify the face of Saba. What does Saba mean? Like in Hebrew, Saba is a grandfather, is somebody who is physically of older age. V'tidhal me'elahach ana Adonai, and you shall fear from your God, I am Hashem. So Targum Unkelus, in looking at these two halves, is the first one who comes and tells us, no. There is something to having an elderly person, to a person who lived a long life. It means HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given him the ability to experience a tremendous amount in his life. And while he may not have the highest level of scholarship from inside the book, his life experience and and what he has gone through is certainly something that younger generations should and must honor when seeing these people. And that's why we stand for those, according to Targum Unkelus, we stand for those who are of older age. So we seem to have a mahloket, we seem to have an argument over here. Some want to say that the true honor is only afforded to those who have wisdom and scholarship. But Targum Unkelus seems to say that there's more to that. Yes, of course, scholarship and wisdom are important, but also someone who is of older age and life experience, that is also something to honor and to show deference towards. Continuing to look within this idea in this halakha, we look at source number 4 as the Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch was written by Rabbi Rabbi Aharon HaLevi in the 14th century in Spain. Although there's some debate about if he was in fact the author, this is generally who's considered the author of the Sefer HaChinuch. And what's interesting is he only offers a mitzvah to honor hachamim, to honor scholars. he does not count as a mitzvah to stand from in front of the elderly. And he gives us a reason which seems to be very in keeping of that. So I'll read to you from the English here just to save us some time. The commandment to honor the sages. To honor sages and to rise in front of them, as it is stated, before an elder rise. And Onkelos translated it as before one who understands the Torah rise. Interesting, he left the second half of Onkelos out, focuses only on the first half. And dignify the face of the aged. They, may their blessed be memory, explained, again he quotes the same Gemara as Rashi, a zaken is only one who has acquired wisdom. And the reason that the verse expressed the sage with the language of aged, why are we confusing wisdom and age, is because the young sage has seen with his wisdom that which the aged has seen from his many years. The chidush, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, of mentioning it as a zaken, is that you can have a young person who has reached the same levels of he who has aged through scholarship and wisdom and reading and studying. So the chidush is that even if someone is very young, they could still be honored as an elderly person who has wisdom because he has acquired it through study and through scholarship. Why do we have this commandment? And here's really, I really want to focus in on. According to this, what is the purpose of this commandment to rise in front of the Hachamim? Says the Sefer HaChinuch, it is from the roots of the commandment that it is since the main purpose of man being in the world is wisdom, so that he can recognize his creator. Therefore, it is fitting to honor someone who has attained it. And through this, others will be aroused to it. According to the Sefer HaChinuch, the reason why we stand in front of a rabbi is a very similar reason we stand for a Sefer Torah itself. We are showing honor to the purpose of the world. The whole purpose of being created, of being a human being, is to recognize our creator, and that is through study and scholarship of the Torah, to have knowledge of Hashem, and that is only through someone who could acquire it through study. And so therefore, since everybody's purpose is to study, we honor those who have achieved such high levels of scholarship, and that gives everybody encouragement and motivation to continue to study and grow in the area of scholarship as well. Once again, the Sefer HaChinuch focusing a tremendous amount of effort on wisdom rather than physical age, focuses this mitzvah on honoring knowledge and scholarship more so than honoring life experience on its own. If we continue, however, we find that there is a whole nother school of thought, as we saw in Targum Onkelos, which actually becomes the true halacha lema'aseh. And for those who know me around this time of year, I become obsessed with the azharot of the poems that we read on Hag Shavuot. Azharot were written by many different rabbis, but the most famous one that we read on the holiday of Shavuot was written by an 11th century Andalusian poet, Rabbi Shlomo ibn Gabirol. And in his poetry, he writes about the mitzvah of rising from in front of and honoring an elderly person. And look what he writes. Beautiful how he incorporates both ideas into this poetry. I'm reading in number 5. Maybe I'll do it with the tune just to give everybody a little preparation for Chag HaShavuot. So what does he say? You should be in front of a sav. Sav is from the word seva, aged, somebody elderly. From in front of the elderly person, you shall be anav. You should be humble. To what? Lesichlo, to his sechel, his intellect, ul shanav, and to his years. In the Azharot to Rabbi Shlomo ibn Gabirol, he beautifully incorporates the halacha, which is that we don't only honor those who have tremendous scholarship, we honor those who are of age, who have years under their belt, years of wisdom and experience that they have from life's lessons that they've accrued over their lengthy lifetime. And vetakum mipanav, you have to rise from in front of him, upanav nehdarim, and glorify his face. I want to turn you to source number 6. It's a perush, a commentary on the Azharot, written by the Tashbetz, Rabbi Shimon ben Tzemach Duran. In his book, Zohar Harakia, he writes the following. He says, Kvod hachamim v'zekenim bekima v'hidurhi, to honor the sages and the elderly by rising and glorifying them. Mitzvat aseh, it is a positive commandment from the Torah, ba'a b'minyan, which is counted amongst the 613 mitzvot. And because he now incorporates also honoring the elderly, not just the wise and scholastically inclined, he now finds a different reason why the Torah has told us to fulfill this mitzvah. He says, you know what it is? Ze lelamed el ha'adam anava. This is to teach the person humility. Shehi gdola mikol hamidot hanimnot, which is the greatest trait from any of the enumerated traits that a person can possibly have. How does this mitzvah teach us anava? Because when a person who may be more wise and scholastically bright than the elderly person has to stand from in front of that elderly person, what does that mean to him? It shows this person is important. Hashem has guided him through life. He has life experience. That is something I don't have, and that is something that I must honor. There are some things, as they say, you cannot learn from inside of a book. This was a lesson I learned very early on when I became a young rabbi in different shuls and different positions. You need to experience certain things. You have to learn on the job. And it takes time to be able to do that. You could read all of the Sifrei Halacha you want. There are certain aspects, how to run a wedding, how to coordinate a Brit Milah, how to answer people certain questions, how to be intuitive about where you could be lenient and where you should be strict. These are things that happen from feel. These are things that happen from experiencing things through life. And all the knowledge in the world will not give that to you. And so when somebody younger acknowledges someone from an older generation who went through things that they didn't go through, who experienced things that they did not go through, who has life lessons at their hand that they dealt with firsthand that you only read about in books, that is something to honor. And that is a sign of humility from the earlier generation towards the older generation. And that is something that the Torah values and wants to instill in every single individual. I recall my Uncle Mo at his 100th birthday giving a beracha to Hacham, I think it was Hacham Ovadia Yosef. I think he was still alive at the time, potentially, or it could have been Hacham Yitzhak Yosef, his son, or I forget exactly, it was Rabbi Amar, one of the Rishon Letzions, one of the chief rabbis, my Uncle Mo on his 100th birthday, giving them a beracha, because even the greatest Talmidei Hachamim recognize a person turns 100 years old, something that is not commonly done. That's a sign that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been with that individual throughout his life, and there's something to gain and learn from that person. And the beracha of that person, as we saw in the very first source, is something of great power to individuals that they bestow the beracha upon. And so we learn anava here from this mitzvah. And the Tashbetz continues to say, Mevi'ah lidei ruach hakodesh, reaching the levels of anava, of humility, bring a person to divine assistance. V'rabban shel kol hanevi'im, the highest of all of our prophets, nishtabach ba, was praised with this trait. V'hacham amar ekev anava yirat Adonai. Uperush hamshorer shemitzvah zo hi linek v'chaim uzaken ashmai. Basically, as Harod tells us, that the mitzvah does not only apply to those who are wise, but also to those who have reached a high age. And in fact, in source number 7, Shulchan Aruch mentions this explicitly. I'll read it. Shulchan Aruch in Yoreh De'ah, Siman Resh Mem Dalid, 244. The Shulchan Aruch was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, our famed and most revered teacher in the 16th century in Tzfat and Eretz Yisrael. Seif Aleph, he writes, Mitzvat Aseh, a positive commandment, Lakum mipene kol hacham, to rise from in front of any sage, afilu enozaken, even if he's not elderly, ela yanik v'hakim, even if he's young but has achieved a lot of wisdom, va'afilu eno rabbo, even if it's not his own rabbi, rak shehu gadol mimenu, only if he is greater than him, v'ra'ui lilmod mimenu, and worthy to learn from him. V'chen mitzvah lakum mipene seva, it is also a mitzvah to rise from in front of the elderly, Dehainu ben shiv'im shana, which is defined by the Shulchan Aruch as reaching the age of 70 years old. The pasuk in Tehillim says, Yemeh shenotenu bahem shiv'im shana. The years of our life are 70 years. If a person reaches the age of 70, the same age as David HaMelech, he has attained a high level. Afiluhu am haaretz, even if the person is an ignorant person when it comes to scholarship and reading, he's still worthy of honor for having reached that age. Ubilvad shelo yihyeh rasha. as long as he is not a wicked individual. It would not be appropriate for anybody to stand in front of someone who is known to be a rasha. I don't know too many people like this, so I don't think that this is so applicable today. And who are we necessarily to judge other people for being a rasha, unless there is clear evidence and definitively, and really, we could assume people have done teshuvah and perhaps are not in a status of rishut. So in general, one rises from in front of all those who have reached Shiv'im Shana, 70 years. There is this humility that we must have in order to show reverence for those who are older than us and have tremendous life experience. I didn't bring it on the source sheet, but I would also like to point out that Harambam mentions that this applies even to Gentiles. It does not only apply to Jewish people. He even writes that if a person sees an elderly individual amongst the nations, he is also obligated to honor that individual by standing slightly and showing respect to the age that that individual has achieved. Again, assuming they are not an evil person, but I don't have any reason to assume that at face value. If you recall, back to a previous source, we saw that the Tashbetz mentioned about humility, and this mitzvah teaches us humility, and that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble of all. And so I will quote to you here the very opening of Pirkei Avot, chapter 1, Mishnah 1. I mentioned this to my sister, I believe, in a couple of days ago, so she will know it. The Mishnah opens, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah from Sinai, umsara liYehoshua, and passed it to Yehoshua. The commentaries are very befuddled by this language. What does that mean, Moshe received Torah from Sinai? It should have said either Moshe kibel Torah me Hashem, from God, or maybe even Hashem natan Torah le Moshe. God gave the Torah to Moshe. What is this notion of Moshe received the Torah from Sinai? And so some commentaries mention that here the Mishnah is again hinting to us the importance of humility. The reason why Moshe was a suitable individual to receive the Torah was because he already had the trait of humility. Without humility, Torah in the hands of the arrogant is a deadly weapon. It could be used to abuse other people, to treat others in a negative way. Torah is not an antidote to anything if the person using it is an arrogant individual who believes that the Torah and the world revolve around themselves. It was Moshe Rabbeinu who was worthy to receive the Torah because of his extreme level of humility that he had as a prerequisite to the Torah. And it's embodied in Har Sinai. Our rabbis famously mentioned that Har Sinai was not the tallest mountain. It was not the grandest looking mountain. The whimsical midrash that says that the hills were fighting over each other. The mountains were arguing about who should receive the Torah. And Sinai clearly did not jump to the forefront. He stayed on the side as a meager hill, saying, I'm not worthy to receive the Torah. And God said, that's the mountain that I want to receive the Torah. One who has humility as a prerequisite is the one who could be able to receive the Torah because he will not abuse the Torah in a negative way. And just to double the whole thing back to the very beginning, we opened with Ruth and the blessing that she received from Naomi. Well, Ruth is the model, the paradigm of receiving and accepting the Torah. It's why we read her Megillah on the holiday of Shabuot. She is the one who embodies what it means to accept Torah from your own free will and volition. But what is her major characteristic throughout the Megillah? It is her humility. Take a look at Ruth, and I contrast her with Hannah, another great woman who also has humility. I'll only look at Ruth for now. Ruth says, she answered, you are most kind, my Lord, to comfort me and speak gently to your maidservant, though I am not so much as one of your maidservants. Ruth is speaking to Boaz here, and she says, Boaz, I thank you so much for even acknowledging your maidservant, and I am not even worthy to be your maidservant. She thinks of herself as nothing. She thinks of herself as not worthy of any of the kindness that she is receiving. And it is because she views herself as not worthy that she is able to be the paradigmatic person of acceptance of Torah. Once again, she says, who are you? He asked. And she replied, I am your handmaid Ruth. Spread your robe over your handmaid, for you are a redeeming kinsman. Even when Boaz is ready to redeem her and to marry her, she says, I am your maidservant. She looks at herself as nothing more than a second-class person in the eyes of Boaz. And that doesn't mean that she defaces herself, although it almost does, but she knows that she is coming with at the sort of against the odds. and Boaz and everybody is giving her tremendous kindness. That is how she views it, when in reality, she is doing so much more for everybody else. She's giving tremendous kindness to Naomi. She's doing a tremendous act for the family. She ends up taking her only child, the one who she couldn't have for 40 years, and she names it for her mother-in-law, not for herself. I don't know too many daughters-in-law who would do that for their mother-in-laws. I know a couple, but not too many. But you see the tremendous humility of Ruth. And Ruth, Moshe, they have this trait inside of them that makes them such worthy candidates to receive the Torah. And through the mitzvah that we talked about honoring the elderly, I mentioned to a few people before we started the class, I feel as though the elderly have gotten a bad rep over these last few months. Everything is nobody over 65, get out, everybody stay home. You're all the problem in society, you're the old issue. And maybe we need to reverse the narrative a little bit. It is the elderly who we need to protect because they're so valuable to our society, because they infuse our society with wisdom, with humility, with life lessons that we would be unable to continue without them. I think that that keeping this mitzvah, the mitzvah of honoring both sages as well as the elderly, recognizing life experience as well as scholarship, instills humility in us, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu had, which is what Ruth had, which makes us worthy of being able to accept the Holy Torah. So in a few days, as we recommit ourselves to Torah and to mitzvot, we accept it upon ourselves once again. Take a moment to think about how I could be a little more humble as an individual. Where are my flaws, maybe perhaps in arrogance? When do I tend to overemphasize myself and need to emphasize other people through kindness, through chesed, through giving to others, through thinking of others, calling, texting others, being a little bit less about me and more about others and more about each other, more about the community, more about other people outside of myself. That is what Ruth was, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was, and that humility will serve us to be able to uphold all of the fundamentals and ideals of our Holy Torah. Chag Shavuot Sameach. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address anything if you have, and otherwise, have a wonderful night.